Welcome to Microeconomics. This is the first lecture today. We will cover the introduction, and this first overhead that I give you is a little background, almost a little more like a syllabus. I'll make sure that you get a copy of it in our first session on Thursday. So here we go. My name is Vincent Newbell. I have a master's degree in international economics from the University of Maryland, College Park, Maryland. I went there for 2 years, was on a scholarship in the PhD program at the university, but ended up leaving after 2 years to pursue a career in business and teaching. My email address, if you need to get a hold of me, is vincent.newbell@tccd.edu. Remember, I'll give you a copy of this so you'll have it for your personal reference. Quizzes. We will have a quiz every week and a midterm exam on or about the 8th week of classes. Quizzes are going to count for a cumulative 25% of your grade. The midterm will count for 25, and the final exam will count for 50% of the semester grade. And the final exam, by the way, will cover the entire course. I'll provide you with a study guide prior to the midterm and the final exam. That will help you prepare for both exams. I expect most students should be able to get at least a B in this class. Your homework will consist of reading the chapters in the textbook. We will do roughly one chapter a week. This first session will cover the introduction, which I'm going to do today, plus the first chapter, which I hope to get finished as well. Class participation when we have class is extremely important. The only way I know that you're learning is if and when you ask questions and respond to questions that I have. So your job is to learn, my job is to teach, and we'll get along great. This is going to be a fun class for you. Class is college venue, therefore a PowerPoint lecture. Textbook is the Principles of Microeconomics by Gregory Mankiw, 7th edition. You should bring this to class each day. We will be going through the text on occasion, particularly close to when you will take a quiz or an exam. So be sure to bring that book to class every day. You can obtain those books at the bookstore, and also I think you can also rent it on Amazon. You can check that out if you have concerns. All right, students are responsible for learning the content in the text, the PowerPoint that I'll show you in class, as well as these lectures. These lectures are not posted on Blackboard. They're proprietary to me. Every word that I've written in here is my own. You may use your cell phone in class, laptops or iPads to record or photograph the slides during class. But no texting, no games, no phone calls, or listening to music during class. I will bring articles from the Wall Street Journal that relate to the course. I get the journal every day and will probably bring you in a day later if I find articles that are pertinent to the subject matter we're studying in the class. This helps to bring what we're studying theoretically more into reality in the way the world works. So all of the above is subject to change if and as events dictate. So once again, you will have a copy of this schedule. Keep it, and it will give you the guidelines that we will pursue during class. Now, background information on me, so you get to know who I am. I'm married. I live in Lantana, Texas. We moved here from the California desert in December of 2013. I have children, a son, a daughter, and one grandson. The reason we left California and came here is that our only grandson lives here in Flower Mound. My background. I've taught four-year colleges, University, Mount St. Mary's University, Emmitsburg, Maryland, UCI California campus, Saddleback Valley College, Cal State University, Palm Desert campus, and of course, Trinity County College. Courses I've taught, and studied a course of macro and micro, comparative economic systems, history of economic thought. I wrote a course on China, India, and the US. I wrote a course also for Cal State in Palm Desert on the economic miracle, China, called China. Also, I've taught real estate principles, limited partnerships, and taxation. Business career. I left a business that I owned in California and I was a certified financial planner. I worked for Waddell and Reed, and I sold that business when we moved to California. I've also been an independent consultant to veterinarian hospitals, both small and large animal. Vice President of sales support for Mariner Networks, which was a startup tech firm. We weren't successful in starting up. We got caught with the telecom debacle, and the CEO and I walked out the door and turned out the lights. I was vice president and general manager of Symbol Express, a division of Symbol Technologies in Bohemia, New York. That's on Long Island, where I'm originally from. Symbol Express, Symbol now is, I think, owned by either Motorola or Cisco. I was vice president of Idaho State Bank in Glenns Ferry, Idaho, and I started my career with Burroughs Corporation, Detroit, Michigan. I was an economic analyst and a senior financial analyst with Burroughs. Unpublished works. I wrote something for the University of California in Palm Desert called The Great Recession, 2008 to unknown when it was going to end. I will bring you parts of this presentation, parts of this will be brought into the course so you can understand some of the things that caused this Great Recession to happen and why it's taken so long to get out of it. Okay, why study economics? Cheap college credit? Who knows? Reasons to study economics. First of all, we need to make sure you understand the world in which you live, work, and prosper. It's important that you understand what's going on in the economy because it's going to be part of your life. If you're interested in borrowing money, for instance, what activities are the Federal Reserve engaging in to raise or lower interest rates? If they're in the mode to be raising interest rates, you might want to borrow now. If they're in the mode to reduce interest rates, you might want to wait and borrow at some other time. Secondly, you will become a more astute member of society and a participant in the economy. It's a known fact in an economic development, an educated and well-informed population makes for much, much better performance in the economy. You have a workforce that's educated, knows how to be innovative, and can get the job done. The other thing you probably don't realize is that when you leave the house in the morning, you're kind of thinking, well, I haven't had breakfast, so I'll either go to Starbucks or I'll go to Chick-fil-A. If you go to Starbucks, you're going to spend $6 for a grande latte and probably a cheese pocket. Maybe you'll get 5 cents change. If you go to Chick-fil-A, again, you can order a chicken sandwich, a Coke, and maybe a cup of coffee and still get change from your $5. So we've made an economic decision based on our wants, preferences, and how much money we have. And that will be the subject of this course as well. Thirdly, a better understanding of economic policy. A lot of information, a lot of policy. Mandates come out of Washington, D.C. They come out of your state government. They come out of your local mayor's office. This course is going to give you somewhat of an insight into how those things function and how they affect you personally. You get an understanding for what's going on in the marketplace, and if the actions taken by Washington, D.C., your state or your local office, what impact will they have on you? You'll have a better understanding of how that all operates. Okay, the basics. I've gotten a lot of questions over time from students, and they're mostly concerned about their own environment. What are they going to do when they leave college? Probably going to get married, start a family, whatever. Maybe not. These things require a certain knowledge of what's going on in the economy and a certain knowledge on your part as to how you will be measured in that economy. For instance, writing checks is important. You should know how to write checks. Establishing a credit rating. I'm going to go through one of the methods of establishing a credit rating that's probably the easiest and probably the quickest. Part of that includes what's a FICO score. FICO score stands for Fair Isaac Corporation. So what does it mean? How is it used? Why do I have to have a FICO score? There are 3 agencies in the US that track these FICO scores for everybody. Equifax is one of them. Experian is another. Those are the dominant ones. So how does that affect your ability to borrow money? Is my FICO score meaningful? Does the bank look at it? Does it mean anything? What is it? And most of all, that FICO score will help determine possibly what interest rate you're going to be charged and if, in fact, they're going to give you the loan. And if in class, if you need to, we will pull up a check and I'll show you how to write it. It all depends on your situation. Excuse me. All right, on your check, when you go to work for a corporation or a company, you may have the opportunity to have your checks deposited directly to your bank, as opposed to taking a check, running down to the bank, and depositing it yourself. The ability to have your check direct deposited to a bank has a lot of benefits from the bank's point of view and from your point of view. Number one, you don't have to run down to the bank and get it cashed or put it in your checking account. Number two, the banks look at it as really a good thing, and you may be able to escape check charges and other charges. Excuse me. So let's take a look at that. All right, first 2 digits are the Federal Reserve District your bank is located in. There are 12 districts around the country. Dallas is one of the districts. So any checks you write in this area are going to have the first 2 digits of your Federal Reserve District on your bank check. Now, those first 2 districts are on the series of 9 numbers on the left-hand side of the bottom of the check. The next series of numbers are your account number. In that digit, 3rd and 4th digits are check processing center, where your check is going to get located in, where your bank is located. The 8th district is a unique identifier. The 8th digit is your unique identifier, blah, 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 getting tongue-tied. The 9th digit is a checksum digit used to verify the accuracy of the other digits. So this is how the Federal Reserve operates, clears checks throughout the country. Let's talk about FICO scores. How important are they? It stands for Fair Isaac Corporation, as I mentioned. Now, in your credit rating and the way they establish this FICO score, they include 35% of the valuation of your score goes to your payment history. If you have borrowed money and paid it off within a month, you have not created a payment history. So one of the things that we have to realize is that in establishing our credit, we might be smart to, say, take a credit card for $1,000 once we have income and are working, spend up to $500 of it, and then pay off that $500 over time. Because what banks are looking for in their process, the process banks go through is called, what do they call it again? I'll think of it in a minute. Anyway, payment history is important. Oh, underwriting is what the bank does. When they evaluate your ability to buy something or to borrow money, they look for payment history in their underwriting process. The underwriting process is the process they're going to go through to determine whether they're going to lend you the money. The next piece of that credit score is 30% credit utilization. The more credit you've taken out, the better the accuracy of your FICO score, and the more comfortable a bank will be in lending you money. 15% of the score is the length of credit history. Young people starting out don't have a length of credit history. Old guys like me, we have a credit history as long as your arm. So starting out, it's important to get established. 10% of it is a type of credit, whether you borrowed on credit cards, whether you've borrowed on a house loan, a car loan, etc. Oops, sorry. And the next is recent searches. Be careful of this one. It's a lot harder to do now, but I got in trouble on this one myself. Some years ago, over 20 years ago, I was searching for a loan for a house. So I went around to different lenders, checking out, there was no internet at that time, checking out what different lenders were offering in terms of interest rate. And I went around to three, finally decided on one. When I went to get the loan, they said, no, you've been searching too many different places for mortgage money, and it looks like you are having trouble borrowing money. So we're not going to lend you any money. Now they've changed that situation. They can't do a credit check on you unless you sign a piece of paper and allow them to. But back in the old days, they could do a credit check into your background as long as you made an inquiry. That's all changed now. The scores and the brackets. So what does this FICO score mean? If your FICO score is somewhere between 300 and 599, that's bad. The only loan you're going to get is a subprime loan, which is a very high risk and, by the way, a very high interest rate loan. So you don't really want that. The next category is 600 to 649. That's still poor credit. You're going to have a tough time borrowing significant amounts of money if that's your credit score. 650 to 699, they consider fair, right? Fair meaning average. 700 to 749 is good credit. When you get out of college and get out of school, target your credit rating to around 740. If you can get to 740, you will be in good shape. Next is very good, 750 to 799, and then 800 to 850, which is excellent. So this is how a bank looks at your FICO score. So the higher the score, the better your chances of borrowing money, not only borrowing money, but also getting an interest rate that's more acceptable to you. By the way, as we're going through all this information, both this and chapter 1, write down any notes you might have or questions you might have, and we'll go through them in class, because if you don't understand something, it may be important that we talk about it in class because someone else might have the same type of question. All right, microeconomics, issues to be explored. 1, the robber barons. We're going to talk a little bit about the turn of the century when the U.S. went through the Industrial Revolution. Certain people were able to take advantage of what was going on. In steel, Andrew Carnegie, a Scotsman, immigrated here from Scotland. Oil, John D. Rockefeller, New York. Railroads, Cornelius Vanderbilt, Edward Harriman, Leland Stanford, Stanford University. Finance, J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan still in existence as an investment firm. Excuse me. We'll also explore AT&T breakup and the creation of the Bell system and the 7 Bell operating companies. What happened then and where they stand today and what's changed today. All right, chapter 1. What we're going to talk about in chapter 1 is how people make economic decisions. We face trade-offs. Our income is not unlimited. We're not Bill Gates. We're not those guys like Zuckerberg, people like that, Elon. We don't have unlimited resources. So what we can buy, we're limited in the amount of money we have to pay for something. So we have to face trade-offs. We have to make a decision as to what we really want. Again, the example I used, of course, was Starbucks versus Chick-fil-A. All right, the cost of something is what you give up. In economics, we're really concerned with the marginal cost, or what we gave up in order to get what we want. Okay? If, for instance, you like chocolate chip cookies, and they're a little bit more expensive than sugar cookies, you may have to make a decision as to which way you're going to go, chocolate chip cookies or sugar cookies, based on the amount of money you have. Next, rational people think at the margin. Let's go back to the case of sugar cookies versus chocolate chip cookies. Chocolate chip cookies are more expensive than sugar cookies. So we have to think at the margin. If they're 50 cents more for chocolate chip versus sugar cookies, that is the change between the two. So we think at the margin, we will save 50 cents and we can go buy something else with that 50 cents if we do the sugar cookies. But if we really prefer chocolate chip cookies, which I do, over sugar cookies, then what you would want to do is sacrifice the 50 cents. And that is the marginal change, as we talk about in economics. All right, we respond to incentives. How often have you gone to a grocery store? Grocery stores, for instance, operate on a 1% margin. So shelf life and stuff moving off the shelf is critical to a grocery store. So the manufacturer who puts stuff on the shelf in a grocery store is very concerned about the price that the stuff is selling at. For instance, he will say you cannot sell below this price, XYZ. And the grocery store then is in a bind, because if its product doesn't sell, it's taking up space in the grocery store, and that's a serious cost to the grocer. So what do? You've seen this time and time again. Rather than fly in the face of the manufacturer, they will offer sales like 2 for 1. Buy one, get one free, or buy one, get the second one for half price. This is how they clear the shelves of product that don't move. All right, trade can make everybody better off. We're talking here primarily about international trade. It's generally agreed among economists that free trade is a benefit to everyone, the world. That it's better to, if we have the advantage in a product we make, it's better to go into the world market and sell that and trade it for other things, or buy other things with the money we make during trade. So free trade is pretty much agreed to by economists as a good thing. Next, markets organize activity. This is the key. Every market has 4 things: supply, demand, price, quantity. And that tends to organize activity. If, for instance, we like products, we buy a lot of them. If we don't buy it, it disappears from the shelf. So what happens is our markets, even though we go to the grocery store, we accept the price that the grocer has, we are engaging in a market. Even though we just buy what he puts the price on, we are buying, selling, supply, demand. So these things cause markets to organize without anybody telling us what to do. Now, here comes the role of government. Governments sometimes can improve and worsen market outcomes. They can pass legislative laws, they can make mandates, they can do things that can impact the marketplace and interfere with supply and demand. The classic example is taxation. They put a tax on something and they will have an impact on the price, because the price will go up by the amount of the tax, and as a result, we might see a drop in supply and people buying that product. So they can do things that help a market system, and they can also do things that make it worse. We'll spend some time on that. Standard of living depends on our ability to produce goods and services. In this class, the first part of the class, we're going to be talking about the consumer. The second part of the class, we'll be talking about the firms that produce them. And the last part will bring the two together and show you how they interact and how the economy is moving on a daily basis. We're totally unconscious of what's happening in the marketplace all day long, 24/7. Next, prices rise when the government prints too much money. This is the old monetary theory that if the government puts too much money out there, it will depreciate the value of the currency. Prices will rise to a very high level, and they will experience in that country, or as a result of government action, they will experience severe inflation. The only example I can think of this today is Venezuela. The Venezuelan money has depreciated tremendously. I've been told by some people who have been there that a potato will cost $300. A tank of gas or a gallon of gasoline is 15 cents. So their economy is way out of whack. All right, we face cycles just like you and I. We get up in the morning, we feel great, ready to conquer the world. Sometimes we get up in the morning, we're still tired, we don't even want to go to school or go to work. A country's business cycles are much the same. Remember, society is composed of people, and people combined create business cycles. Classic example is the money that the Bush administration gave to people to help the Great Recession, which was coming. Everybody who paid taxes got $300 rebate, a check in the mail from the federal government. It didn't have much in effect because what really happened was our thinking, society at the time was we were very concerned. Unemployment was heading towards a high level of 10%. The stock market, the Dow Jones Industrial Average had dropped from about 13,000 to 6. The housing prices dropped from as much as 30 to 50% in some areas. In addition to that, we were concerned about loss of our jobs. So the impact of the tax rebates from the Bush administration were significantly diminished because of society and what society was facing. All right, one of the things I don't like about the particular textbook that we have is that in chapter 1, he introduces a whole bunch of key terms in economics. I would rather do these through the course of the chapters as we go through the course because they're more meaningful. But based on the way he's done it, we'll follow his plan and we will expand on all of these concepts as we go through the course. So don't worry too much about memorizing these definitions. All right, economics. First of all, this is something we have to know. Economics is the study of how the economy manages its resources. And it's also really a study of how we manage our resources. How do we manage our income? We don't want to spend too much. We don't want to get into too much debt. We don't want the country to get into too much debt. We're going to spend some time on this issue as well. So economics, by definition, is the study of how the economy manages its resources. Scarcity. Scarcity is key. Again, we don't have unlimited resources. So we have to decide what we want. So resources are limited. They're not abundant. For instance, money. Efficiency. Getting the most benefit from the resources society has at its disposal. This depends on the resources that a country may have that they can benefit the most from. The United States, we're very fortunate. We have a country that has extremely good natural resources. Some countries don't. Sub-Saharan Africa, for instance, does not have an abundance of natural resources. So what we do with those resources is most important. The key to an efficient economy is utilizing the resources we have, and for the resources we don't have, understanding that we have to trade with other countries in order to obtain those resources. Equality, the distribution of those resources among the members of society. In this course, we're going to spend some time on welfare and the needy. In the U.S., the poverty level is at about $24,000 per family. If you are making less than $24,000, you are in the poverty level. We'll spend some time on that. We'll look at where the poverty level is the worst and in the U.S. Rational people. This is key to economics. It assumes that people will not do stupid things. Okay? It in effect means that we will do things based on the principle that the things that we do will benefit us. Okay? Fairly simple concept, but sometimes we don't really follow this because other things get in our way. The point being here is that rational people systematically and purposefully make economic decisions to achieve their goals and objectives. Opportunity cost. This is key. We gain something, we've had to give something up. The opportunity cost of buying chocolate chip cookies versus sugar cookies is what we want and demand. So the opportunity cost of buying chocolate chip cookies is giving up the sugar cookies. More key terms. Incentive, that which induces a person to make a decision. We talked about the grocery store. Okay? Shelf life, it's not moving fast enough off the shelf. The grocer offers you buy one, get one free. Buy one, the second one is 50% off. These are things that are incentives and they induce us to act on an economic decision. Marginal change, small incremental adjustment to a plan of action. Now, when we talk about marginal change, and we'll talk about it a lot when we get into supply and demand in chapter 4, I believe, what we're going to talk about is a movement along the demand curve. If the price goes down, will we buy more? If the price goes up, will we buy less? Okay? On the supply side, for a firm, if they see a price increase, will they produce more? This is called marginal change. Market economy, we're going to talk about primarily different measures of an economy. We in the US have a market economy or another capitalistic system. Other countries have different types of economic systems. We will study those. The first economist that put this down into any kind of semblance of an academic study was Adam Smith. He wrote a book in 1776 called The Wealth of Nations. Now, what he said in The Wealth of Nations, we'll take some time going over this, was that government should just leave business alone and it will function properly all by itself. It's called laissez-faire economics. Government is to leave us alone. Property rights. This is key to capitalism and to a market economy. If we do not have the ability to own property and derive the benefit or profit from that ownership, we don't really have a market economy. So property rights are critical to a market economy. If we didn't have property rights, why would we take the risk? Why would Bill Gates tell IBM he's not going to sell them the operating system for Windows? Because he took a chance because he thought he could do better than selling off his prized possession to IBM. The other part of this is intellectual property. In the US, particularly, we protect intellectual property by issuing patents and copyrights. Copyrights particularly for books, patents for inventions. These protect the people's efforts that nobody can steal it. So we do have things like market failures, the inability of markets to allocate resources efficiently. We will talk about this a lot. Governments, in many cases, have to step in when the market is inefficient, when things aren't allocated properly. We'll go into some examples of that later on. Okay, lastly, more key terms. Market power. We're going to talk in this class about monopolies and oligopolies. Market power is the ability of a firm or a few firms to control the marketplace. In the case of a monopoly, the monopolist owns the demand curve for his product. He can charge any price he wants. Okay? That's called market power. The ideal situation is no one group or no one company controls the marketplace, and market power is limited, and we have a purely competitive situation for products. Externalities. This is the impact of one person against others, an innocent bystander. For instance, secondhand smoke. Most restaurants and places ban cigarettes now. This campus that we're on has cigarette smoking is totally banned. And it wasn't an issue until we discovered that secondhand smoke also causes illness. The other example we use primarily is that we have in this country, we initially developed electricity by water and coal. Coal, unfortunately, emits a lot of CO2 emissions into the atmosphere. So it's called an externality. The CO2 emissions from coal-fired plants are something that are being addressed by the government. Productivity, the quantity of goods and services produced from each labor value unit of labor. This really relates to, given the number of people employed, what is the quantity of goods and services they're producing? In other words, are we producing more per person or less? If we're producing more per person, the productivity per person increases. If we're producing less, which is not a good thing, the productivity per person decreases. Now, a big impact on productivity per person is specialization of what we do, the ability of us to use capital equipment, machinery, etc., and also technology. Technology has a big impact on productivity. Inflation. This is part of the business cycle. When we have inflation, prices have gotten out of control. The most recent example was the end of World War II. The GIs came home with money. Their wives and girlfriends were working in factories. Everybody had money to spend at the end of World War II. Unfortunately, factories had all been geared to producing war equipment, and there were no goods or services for people to spend the money on, and the little amount of goods and services that was available caused the price level to increase dramatically. And of course, this is part of the business cycle. A boom period of cycle can result in inflation that we don't like. A swing in the cycle where it goes down can result in could result in deflation or recession. That's not good either. The Federal Reserve and the federal government have actions that they can take to mitigate these fluctuations or swings, and we will talk about those. Okay, we'll stop there.